The first time I saw those bulldozers ripping into the earth around my lake, my heart slammed against my ribs like a caged animal fighting for air. It was dawn, the kind where the mist hangs low over the water, carrying the sharp tang of pine and wet soil. And I was out on my dock with a steaming mug of black coffee, the steam curling up like ghosts in the chill. Then came the roar engines growling, metal teeth gnashing into the ground, drowning out the gentle lap of waves against the wood. I dropped the mug. It shattered with a sharp crack, hot liquid splashing my boots. What the hell? I muttered, breath fogging the air. That's when I spotted them, the Karen sisters, striding across the torn-up land like queens claiming their throne, their designer sunglasses glinting in the rising sun, voices sharp and entitled, barking orders at the crew. Kimberly and Kendra wins, infamous in our small town for turning family inheritance into an empire of gated communities and overpriced spas. They bought the adjacent plot years ago. But this was my lake, my grandfather's legacy, the crystal-clear water he'd fought to preserve, now threatened by their luxury eco-resort bullshit. I stormed over, boots sinking into the mud, the earthy scent turning sour with diesel fumes. This is trespassing, I yelled, voice cracking with rage. Kimberly turned, her lips curling into that smug smile, the one that said she owned the world. Oh, honey, she cooed, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Read the fine print. This lake's shared access now. We're just enhancing it. Enhancing. They were planning villas, a marina, the works right on the edge of my property line, draining the soul from the place that had been my sanctuary since Dad died. The mouth one hit like a sucker punch, these women, with their HOA iron fists and endless lawsuits against anyone who dared complain. We're about to ruin everything I held dear. I felt the bile rise, a deep sigh escaping as I clenched my fists, the cool morning air doing nothing to calm the fire in my chest. Back at my cabin, the walls seemed to close in, the creak of old floorboards under my pacing feet echoing my frustration. I'd inherited this land 5 years ago, after Mom passed, and it was all I had left, a quiet retreat where the loons called at night, their haunting wails piercing the silence like forgotten memories. The smell of fresh-baked bread from her old recipes still lingered in my mind, mixed now with the acrid bite of betrayal. I pored over maps and deeds that night, the lamp's harsh light casting shadows that danced like demons on the yellowed paper. Shared access. Bull. My family had riparian rights dating back to the 1800s, but the sisters had pulled some shady rezoning with the county board friends in high places. Whispers of bribes. I slammed the table, the thud reverberating through the empty room, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Not on my watch, I whispered to the ghosts of my ancestors. But doubt crept in, cold and insidious, like the fog rolling off the lake. How does one guy fight twin tycoons with an army of lawyers? I sighed heavily, sinking into the worn armchair, the leather creaking under my weight, and stared out at the moonlit water, its surface rippling like shattered glass. The next morning, fueled by black coffee and simmering anger, I drove into town, the truck's tires humming over the potholed road, radio blaring country tunes that matched my grit. I headed to the only lawyer I trusted, Old Man Harlan, who'd helped Dad with boundary disputes back in the day. His office smelled of stale cigars and leather-bound books, the tick-tock of an antique clock marking time like a heartbeat. Son, he said, peering over half-moon glasses, his voice gravelly from years of courtroom battles. This ain't gonna be easy. Those Karens, they've got the HOA locked down, fees, rules, the whole 9 yards. But if we prove encroachment... His words trailed off, and I felt a spark of hope flicker, warm against the chill of uncertainty. We dug in, poring over surveys, the rustle of papers the only sound besides our muttered curses. Days blurred into nights, the lake's distant calls pulling at me like a siren's song. I'd stand on the dock at dusk, the water's cool mist kissing my skin, listening to the frogs' chorus swell and fade, a natural symphony now threatened by construction noise that hammered like accusations. Then came the twist I never saw coming into Aunt Lila, Mom's estranged sister, blowing in like a summer storm. I hadn't seen her in decades. She'd vanished after a family feud over the inheritance. Rumors of her running off to Vegas with some gambler. But there she was, knocking on my cabin door one rainy afternoon. The patter of drops on the tin roof a relentless drumbeat. She looked weathered, silver streaks in her hair, but her eyes sharp as ever, carrying the same fire Mom had. "Heard about the trouble," she said, shaking off her umbrella, the scent of rain and faint perfume filling the room. "Those bitches think they can bulldoze our bloodline. Not while I'm breathing." I paused, breath catching, as she pulled out a faded envelope from her bag, the original deed, with clauses I'd missed, proving exclusive water rights tied to environmental protections Grandpa had lobbied for. Why now? Turns out, she'd been watching from afar, guilt gnawing at her like the wind eroding the lakeshore. "I owed your mom," she sighed, her voice cracking, a tear tracing her cheek. We hugged, awkward at first, then fierce, the thunder outside rumbling approval. Lila's arrival added layers, her stories of past betrayals, the way her laughter bubbled up unexpectedly, lightening the heavy air. But it also stirred old wounds. Late nights, we'd argue over strategy, voices rising like the wind whipping the trees, leaves rustling in frantic whispers. Her presence was a lifeline, yet it tugged at buried grief, making my emotions swing like a pendulum, elation to sorrow, determination laced with doubt. Armed with the new evidence, we filed the lawsuit. The courthouse steps slick with morning dew as I climbed them, heart pounding like war drums. The sisters' resort was half built by then, skeletal frames rising against the skyline, the clang of hammers and whine of saws a constant assault on the peace. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick with tension, the wooden benches creaking under shifting bodies, the judge's gavel a sharp crack that silenced whispers. Kimberly took the stand first, her voice smooth as silk but edged with venom. "This is progress," she declared, gesturing dramatically, "bringing jobs, luxury elevating this backwater hole." The gallery murmured, a low hum of agreement from their HOA cronies, dressed in crisp polos and khakis. I felt the heat rise in my face, a deep breath steadying me as Harlan grilled her, exposing the forged surveys, the bribed officials. Kendra fidgeted beside her sister, her usual poise cracking, a sigh escaping as documents piled up like accusations. The trial dragged on, days of testimony blending into a haze of legalese and pointed fingers. One evening, after a brutal cross-examination, I retreated to the lake, the sun dipping low, painting the water in fiery oranges and reds. The smell of algae and earth grounded me, the soft splash of a fish jumping a reminder of what was at stake. Lila joined me, her hand on my shoulder warm and reassuring. "We're close," she whispered, but her voice trembled, revealing her own fears. The climax hit in the final arguments. The courtroom packed, air humming with anticipation like static before a storm. Harlan stood tall, his voice booming. "This isn't about progress, it's about greed trampling heritage." He slammed the deed on the podium, the thud echoing. The sister's lawyer countered, slick and condescending, but cracks showed witnesses flipping, evidence mounting. Then, the unexpected bombshell, a whistleblower from their crew, a burly guy named Mike, who'd overheard bribes. His testimony delivered with a nervous stutter, sweat beading on his brow. The gallery gasped, a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen from the room. Kimberly leaped up, face twisted in fury. "Lies. All lies." Her voice cracked, high and shrill, like glass shattering. The judge's gavel pounded, order restored. But the damage was done. I locked eyes with Kendra, seeing the defeat in her gaze, a sigh so deep it seemed to deflate her. Outside, as rain began to fall, fat drops splattering the windows with rhythmic taps, I felt the weight lift, a rush of vindication surging through me like adrenaline. The verdict came swift and sweet, encroachment proven, resort halted, massive fines levied. But that was just the start. The lawsuit snowballed, class actions from HOA members sick of the sisters' tyrannical rules, hidden fees exposed like rotten fruit. Their empire crumbled. The resort auctioned off, billions in damages awarded. I cashed out, Not just money, but justice enough to preserve the lake forever, turning it into a protected sanctuary. As I stood on the dock months later, the bulldozer's gone, replaced by the serene hush of nature, birdsong trilling in the crisp air, the scent of wildflowers blooming anew. I breathed deep. Lila beside me. We watched the sunset, colors bleeding into the water like a promise. The Karens, bankrupt, their HOA dissolved in scandal, whispers of jail time trailing them like shadows. In that moment, the high of victory mixed with quiet reflection, a sigh of contentment escaping. Life's battles aren't just won in courts. They're fought in the heart, where heritage meets grit. And sometimes, the little guy strikes back, reminding the world that entitlement has a price in justice. It tastes like freedom on the wind.